Nagaland State Commissioner of Persons with Disabilities Tetono Nakhro par Friday de kushik universal accessibility do optional no hoy itu ekta human right ase aro negotiate kuribole na paribo. Universal Accessibility and Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016 lago opor Kohima de workshop lo homoy Nakhro kushik state te thagya public building kan sobke list kurigina accessibility rules hisab ra banabole lage time ekta digina. Idu logode department prabi government aro public buildings kan sobte accessibility data rakhibole lagya kushi. Workshop te SCBD Nagaland laga legal consultants Christine Yokire aro asilna waling bi khota kushi.
The Harmonized Guidelines and Standards for Universal Accessibility in India 2021 was previously known as the Harmonized Guidelines and Space Standards for Barrier-Free Built Environment for Persons with Disabilities and Elderly Persons in 2016. Earlier, the guidelines were for creating a barrier-free environment, but now the focus is on universal accessibility. The objective is to sensitize diverse stakeholders regarding various accessibility needs and provisions for diverse population groups in the built environment.
Parking and drop-off areas, office entrance, reception counter, waiting areas, accessible workstation, healthcare building, parking areas, building entrance, registration counters, dispensary counters, waiting spaces, etc. All public areas to be accessible, including OPDs, IPDs, wards, toilet, changing rooms, sample collections room, X-ray rooms, patient examinations room, medical distribution rooms, and centers.
But when it comes to executing the various provisions of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, the Disability Act, letter and spirit, this is something so important actually. It becomes very meaningful, because understanding why something needs to be implemented is something so important. The explicit instructions, the directives, the laws, the rules, it's there. We can all read and say, oh, this one has to be made, oh, that one has to be done, that has to be put into place. It's easy to, just see, read, and then do something. But if we don't understand why we are putting that into place, for example, today we are going to talk about accessibility, ramps, lifts. You all have already, done all that in your office building. So those things, why are we putting those into place? If we don't have that understanding, then the implementation will not be done properly. So this understanding something in letter and in spirit, not just reading that law that is there, but understanding why that law has to be implemented, that becomes very important, particularly in disability law. Let's first talk about accessibility. These days a lot of talk goes on about accessibility, disability accessibility, and all sorts of things in various meetings, in various workshops, and all you will hear this word accessibility. A lot of nowadays it has become quite common. But though we talk about it, not everyone seems to really know what it means. Why is there a need for accessibility? Many people are not fully aware of this. And to get a clear understanding of the need for accessibility, we have to first understand what lack of accessibility really means. What lack of accessibility does to people who has mobility issues, And in short, to put it simply, what lack of accessibility really means is that a large section of the society basically has no life, So no accessibility equals no life for persons with disabilities. Now I will just talk a little bit about that, So inaccessibility, lack of accessibility, when we talk about that, it means isolation. Today, see, we have all come together today for this program. That socialization, taking part in, the life of the community. When we can do that, there is no who live with disabilities, who have mobility issues, or who cannot see or mix, interact with people, they cannot go anywhere and they are confined to their homes, to the four walls of their rooms even. Many people because of inaccessibility. When there is lack of accessibility, it means that children, young people with disabilities cannot go and cannot go to school, cannot go to college and get an education. It means that people with disabilities in their prime, in the working age, they cannot go and work, they cannot go and engage in income-generating activities and earn a livelihood. Many people with disabilities and their families, they live in poverty. That's the truth. When we talk about BPL and things like that, you will find that many people with disabilities and their families live much, much below the poverty line, because of the cost of disability. The paradox is that there is a huge cost in disability. But then there is an extra huge cost in disability, but the paradox is that the income is much, much lesser than other people without that extra cost. So to cover the extra cost of disability is impossible in many cases. So many people with disabilities, they live in abject poverty. And the lack of disability accessibility does this to many people, and then inaccessibility, it means that they are excluded from celebrations, weddings, birthdays, different parties, or even our festivals, When there is no accessibility, how can we go and join them? So we are excluded from these celebrations, from church services, worship services, from everyday life, all aspects of everyday life that non-disabled people take for granted.